Welcome to day 127 on the trail. We have three readings for today from John 10, verses 22 through 42, Numbers 35, verse 9 through 36, verse 13, and 1 Maccabees chapter 5, verses 45 through 68. As we near the conclusion of Numbers, we encounter an intriguing discussion on the handling of murder and accidental deaths within the Torah. As we previously discussed in our exploration of the Torah, justice for all community members was of utmost importance. For instance, in other cultures in the ancient Near East, a person committing murder could offer a ransom payment in exchange for punishment. As you can imagine, this practice would primarily benefit the wealthy. The Torah, however, unequivocally rejects this practice and upholds justice for all individuals, regardless of their socioeconomic status. Additionally, measures were implemented to prevent false accusations or revenge before a trial. For example, a person could not be convicted solely based on the testimony of a single witness. Furthermore, in the unfortunate case of an accidental death, cities of refuge were established to provide protection from the victim's next of kin who may be seeking revenge. In Numbers 35, beginning in verse 25, we read this: "The slayer shall live in it, that is the city of refuge, until the death of the high priest who was anointed with the holy oil. But if the slayer shall at any time go outside of the bounds of the original city of refuge, and is found by the avenger of blood outside of the bounds of the city of refuge, and is killed by the avenger, no blood guilt shall be incurred." We may wonder why a person who killed someone accidentally was required to stay in the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. Well, in both cases, murder and accidental death, the shedding of blood defiled the land. We saw a similar reference to the defilement of the land by bloodshed in Genesis chapter 4 and the story of Cain and Abel. In Genesis chapter 4, beginning in verse 10, we read, "And the Lord said, 'What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand.'" Throughout the Exodus experience, we have witnessed God's presence in the Israelite community, as evidenced by the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, and the pillar of smoke and fire. Therefore, since human death can only be atoned for by human death, only the death of the high priest, who plays a crucial role in the interaction between God and the Israelites, can provide a satisfactory compensation for the defilement of the land. As we have seen throughout the Torah to this point, the importance of motive and intention is clearly emphasized, and fundamental to understanding the law. Now then, in the New Testament, we will see that Jesus will take the concept of our motives a step further. In Matthew chapter 5, Jesus provides his teaching on murder and its underlying motive. Matthew 5, beginning in verse 21. "You have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, 'You shall not murder,' and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you are angry with your brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to the council. And if you say, 'You fool,' you will be liable to the hell of fire." Turning now to the Gospel of John. Jesus is once again in Jerusalem for the festival of dedication, or Hanukkah, which we covered recently in 1 Maccabees. On this occasion, Jesus is asked directly if he is the Messiah. Now earlier, at the Feast of Tabernacles, Jesus told the crowds gathered in Jerusalem that he was the source of living water and light for the world. Then, after he healed a man who was blind since birth, Jesus proclaims that he is the Good Shepherd. Now, all of these were powerful statements of Jesus' relationship to the Father. But now, a group of Jewish people want to know if he is indeed the Messiah. In verse 24, we read this. So the Jews gathered around him and said to him, "How long will you keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly." So what are their intentions in asking this question? Do they want to know the answer so they can acknowledge Jesus as the Messiah? The answer is likely no. Now, many scholars have noted the similarity between the question asked here in John's Gospel and the questions asked of Jesus at his trial in Mark chapter 14 and Luke chapter 22. For example, in Luke's account of Jesus' trial before the Sanhedrin, we find this. When day came, the assembly of the elders of the people, both chief priests and scribes, gathered together, and they brought Jesus to their council. They said, "If you are the Messiah, tell us." He replied, "If I tell you, you will not believe, and if I question you, you will not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the power of God." As you can see, the question posed in John's Gospel and the answer Jesus gives here in Luke seem very similar. Therefore, it is likely that those who are asking Jesus if he is indeed the Messiah in this passage in John's Gospel are really more interested in discrediting Jesus rather than following him. Now, in response, Jesus, as he has done throughout John's Gospel, addresses the real motive of those questioning him. The signs that Jesus has done among them in his Father's name should be enough to prove to them the truth of Jesus' teaching and his relationship to God. However, Jesus tells the Jewish leaders that they do not believe because they do not belong to the flock of Jesus. Now, based on this statement from Jesus, some theologians have suggested that becoming members of Jesus' flock is something that they cannot choose for themselves. That is, that the Father must add them to the flock first. But this view is far too limiting for what Jesus is saying here. In fact, notice that in verses 37 and 38, we also find that people have a choice to honestly see and understand the work that Jesus is doing. They have a choice to really listen to what he is teaching. And as a result, they can choose to believe that Jesus is indeed who he says he is. Reading from John chapter 10, beginning in verse 37. "If I am not doing the works of my Father, then do not believe me. But if I do them, even though you do not believe me, believe the works, so that you may know and understand that the Father is in me, and I am in the Father." And here is the great promise. Those who listen to the voice of Jesus and follow him will have a relationship with the one true good shepherd, who willingly lays down his life for his sheep so they can become members of his flock forever. They will never be lost, for they have been found. They will never perish, for they have found the source of living water. They will never walk in darkness, for they have found the light of life. And no one can snatch them from his care, because all authority in heaven and earth has been given to him. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.